All right. I projected get out of the way. I projected the agenda here. Can you guys see my poor little email here down here? Okay. So three topics in no particular order. One was Bill and I had done a little bit further work on the SCAP stuff, which was after that excellent discussion we had last time. I think I understand SCAP a little bit better, and Bill had updated a diagram, and then I fussed with it as well. So we wanted to pass it by you guys to make sure that we're on the same page and get feedback. So that's one thing. And then once I have that better understood, I think I could go back to the architecture paper and update it, because I didn't think I did a good job in the first pass on SCAP. I didn't do it justice. But I do want to have a sidebar conversation with the SCAP team on, SACM versus SCAP and the IETF versus the NIST and where that's going. So we'll probably talk about that. I don't see Andrew on the line. Hopefully he shows up. But he did some work on a tip use case. If he comes on, we'll talk about that. He posted, I don't know if you guys saw it. He put it out on the GitHub. And then Mark, I see you're on. Forrest, it says he definitely said he'd be late, but when he comes on, we'll talk a little bit about the ontology and how to get it started. So that'll be at the end, because I know Forrest said he'd be the second half of the meeting. He'd show up. All right, those are topics I had. Obviously, I'll take other topics as we go. It's obviously open discussion, but those are the ones I thought would be helpful to start with. If you guys are okay with that.
All good.
Welcome, Mitch. Okay, so let me start with Bill and I's attempt at trying to let me get my screen here. All right, here is it. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Is it? Give me a second. I got to find it. It's on one of these 15 screens. I think it's in my Safari. I think it's in my Safari. Give me a second. Nope, it's not in my Safari. It may be in my Chrome. Yes, it's in my Chrome. Okay, here we go. Share my Chrome. Where is it? Here it is.
I can see it already.
Can you? Okay, great. I wonder if WebEx is smarter than I am and figures out what I really need. Okay, this diagram, which hopefully is full screen so you can see it all. It was an initial diagram we had put together as we were going through the use case of the malware detection and action, and I'd done a lot of work on mapping it to the current ontology that existed out on the OCA GitHub, and then we put together some scenarios around the use case that talked about how each of these different systems would interact. And I had put the posture collection attribute system over here because I didn't understand it. And then if you remember the last meeting, Bill helped me put it back into the context of this diagram. And then what we did now was we tried to now put the arrows, now that we know how these systems work, to relate them to all the other systems we have here that are collecting information. And the confusion I had was, we have the workstation and we have these scanners. Each of these does have some posture information they're collecting, and you would think somehow we'd want to feed a collection system. And we also have these systems up here, which we know are going to query for context or get information from an assessment system, right? If you're doing some kind of use case around a SOAR user or a SOAR user or threat intelligence officer or a SIM admin, you're probably going to want to interrogate a posture assessment system. So we kind of added arrows here. So, the macro, that's what we tried to do here. So if we walk through the details is we took, if you remember Bill's picture, he had published collection results and performed posture attribute collection. And again, these are going to have to be part of our ontology, right? These are two things that'll be interactive between different components. And we did discuss the fact that we really we are going to publish collections from either the workstation itself or scanners from the workstation, which are, checking vulnerabilities on the endpoints, typical file scanners on the endpoint or an email scanner. They are going to find some level of posture assessment, and they're going to want to feed some of that data in, I think, to the system. So we added those here. Right, so there will be an interaction that you can ask for posture collection to these particular systems, as well as the endpoint, as well as the get the information back. So that's part A. And in part B, you can see we added the orange lines here to show that a threat intelligence system, or these red lines here, the orchestration system we saw was key, based on Bill's discussion, to the posture assessment system. They kind of fit hand in glove with each other. They're kind of dependent on each other. And I talked a lot with Bill and Adam about that, right? There is the SOAR, I think, has a very unique plug-in to driving the orchestration of the posture collection. So we did put that here as a key line to go and orchestrate not only the assessment, but also the collection of the posture collection from all the various and sundry endpoints they're going to report back. So I think these are key. These SOAR lines are key. And then again, I think we have the SIM system where, if somebody's a SIM operator, administrator, they're probably going to want context information about posture. They may go directly to these systems, or again, they may use the posture assessment system. My opinion of the posture assessment system after talking to Bill and Adam is this is going to give me more of a composite, holistic view of the posture versus the ones I may get from these, which will be perspective of the email system or the file system. And so I think that while there are appropriate arrows here, I think the data we may get from these will be a little bit different. I think I'm expecting more encompassing information from this system than from either of those, because I think they only see part of the information. So let me stop there and see if there's any comments.
Two comments. I don't know whether we want to make the posture assessment system a collector of the email scanner and the file scanner, or whether they operate separately. In other words, if you've got, in your ontology an action to do a posture assessment, then you can get an answer from the email scanner. You could get an answer from an endpoint scanner if they were acting as posture assessment systems, or you could get a richer answer from some other product that's doing more complete assessments. So yeah, I don't know whether those two things are subclasses or agents, or whether we want to keep them separate. The other question is, we've got over on the left side, you've got a quarantine device action and a block file action.
Yep.
Those are shown coming from the SIM. I thought those would be SOAR actions.
They could be either. If you remember, I did the SIM component diagram here. We have a different one for SOAR. So yeah, they could be either. And so that's fair.
That's it.
Okay, and on the first comment, I'd love some comment back from Bill and Adam. I hear what you're saying. I do think that the scanners you mentioned, the file and email, are only a subset of a posture to me. I agree. So I don't know, but they do give you a unique perspective. So again, I guess it's a question of how posture collection is done, and it may again be against the policy that you build to create the posture assessment, which I think is where it's going to come from. And if that decomposes into, gee, I want to know what the email system thinks about it, so the orchestrator then would pull this, and if it didn't, then it wouldn't. But that's me assuming. What Bill and Adam, what do you think?
Kind of waiting for Bill to chime in. Are you there, Bill?
No, go ahead.
He's right behind you, Adam.
Well, yeah, I guess I could, maybe David, if you could re-explain that in a slightly different way, because I'm not sure I was completely following what you were saying.
Okay, so the SOAR, I guess, can orchestrate posture assessment.
Yep.
So if it sends a command out, the ontology defines do a posture assessment action.
Mhm.
Either the email system can read that action directly and answer it in the form of, an assessment response, or the posture assessment system will treat the email scanner as a collection system. And that would be, kind of a proprietary, a non-defined interface. And it would get the answer back from the email system and it would return a posture assessment response after it's done that proprietary email collection. I don't know if that's clear.
So
Yeah,
you're
that makes
saying
sense.
like the email scanner acts as a collection system in that case.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, so this is showing right here. Yep.
that's certainly plausible. Yep.
And it's only going to be a subset, or I imagine, of the overall posture collection you need from the device, right? So there's you handle more than one feeder for the collecting, right?
Right. I think the idea kind of from the SACM perspective is that a collection system has a set of capabilities, and one of those capabilities could be to do with attributes relating to email information collection or file system types of collection for like the malware protection scanner. Like all of those could in fact act as posture collection systems.
Yep.
In their own way, defined by the particular capabilities of each of those tools.
That makes sense to me. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, and then the assumption I made here, Bill and Adam, was this posture collection system can asynchronously handle stuff coming in, because this is, I know a lot, when I read your system, a lot of it was driven it was all nice and internal and nice and clean, but the world doesn't quite work that way half the time. And so, everything got pushed over here, and then this guy went off and grabbed this stuff, and the orchestrator drove the actions. In this case, it could just be an asynchronous schedule that drove these things, or an action that drove these things. So
Totally.
This system really hasn't kicked anything off, but at the same time, I'm going to send the data back. Is that okay?
That's totally fine. I think first I'll say thanks for reading this and commenting on the SACM draft. And like one of the pieces that's still to do on that are the various kind of types of collection, and the beginning diagram really kind of speaks to ad hoc collection. So when something kicks it off, right. So that could be a user saying, I need to go perform an assessment or do collection of a particular set of attributes. There's other types, kind of event-driven or observational collection or scheduled polling-related collection, things of that nature that are to be written in that draft. But yes, all of those apply.
Great. I was hoping that was true. All right, thanks for those comments, Dave. Anybody else have any other comments on what we're doing here?
I'd say that it looks like it's starting to come together, which is nice.
Yeah, it is. Is that I had a bad understanding of this information now, but I kind of see how they fit together. I mean, the one thing I still want to get is a better handle of the value of creating a centralized posture system. I know there is value to that, but I really want to do a better job of explaining why. Not doing these independent multiple queries for all these different aspects to get an overall posture is not. It's better to do it this way, where it's more holistic and more complete, I think. But I don't do a good job capturing that. So yeah, it's nice to bring the diagrams together, which is what Bill and I were trying to do here.
Good deal.
All right. Did I miss anything? Did Bill and I get anything that we should add to this that you guys can think of? I mean, those are the major things I saw, was the posture collection and the orchestration of it. From the macro level, again, there's a lot of stuff at the detailed level, but do we have the systems kind of working now with each other appropriately? I mean, the only other answers things that I had, guys, on the system, and I had them over here. Can you send events? I assume I saw you had a manager component in here, or it was probably a queue. I couldn't figure it out really, but there's ability for, I guess, for somebody to subscribe to the events that come out of these systems, so that if something goes wrong, like a collector's not working for a critical piece of the assessment, I'll know that at the SIM. Is that true? Or could know that at the SIM?
Yeah, I believe we could, but
Okay.
you might have to validate that. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if we're working on a message fabric, right, on a bus,
Yep.
basically, we can
Yep.
do that. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be an issue. We
I thought
definitely
you
have
had
the
a queue to
health
find.
checks, right?
Okay.
We have
Yep.
heartbeat and health checks and all that
Yep.
kind of stuff in the
I saw
drive.
that.
So
Yep. Yep.
there should be no reason that either a proprietary implementation or we write into the spec, like when something goes wrong, then
All right.
we can have part of the ontology be, hey, something's wrong, and that goes maybe to the SIM or the SOAR or wherever it's
Right.
appropriate,
Exactly.
or whoever's listening, really, right?
You're right. We posted on the bus, right? Yeah, I saw you had a queue defined. It looked like I was just trying to make sure that there was a way to connect to that queue, and I think there is. So that
Yeah,
anybody,
there's a general idea of like, in terms of like a status topic, and that sort of just kind of the seemingly like the generic, I'm going to send a message to whatever subscribed of a particular form of event.
okay, okay, good, good. That's, I thought when I read your spec, it looked like there was a place I could listen in there, because I do imagine the source system and the SIM system are going to want to know if there are any issues. I think I see some unique cases where threat intelligence system could help with context when the posture goes wrong, but we'll leave that off for now. So we'll keep it simple at this point. Okay, any other comments? Otherwise, we'll go to.
You mentioned application in the question. I guess the idea was the application was anything that talked to the posture assessment system. So in this drawing, the SOAR would be the application.
Yep, yep. The SOAR or the SIM.
Yeah.
They're both talking.
I'll noodle on that offline. I didn't know that the SIM category would be taking active actions. I thought it was just an event manager.
No, no, they take a lot of actions, a lot of queries and context that go on there. Some automation goes on there. A lot of it's mostly grabbing context and information to feed the SOAR with the incident.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there can be interaction here so it's not just event. They used to be log managers back in the day, but these things now are pretty beastie, and they certainly can take actions and queries. But a lot of, again, is just queries and context, and if they see something come in, they say, like in this case, the malware event. If these things come in, I guarantee you a SIM would have a rule in it that would fire off to get more information from the threat intelligence system in this system to get context.
That's all collecting. Yeah, that's collecting information. Yeah, it can send out requests, but
Yeah.
doing a block a file, that sounds more like orchestration.
Oh, okay. Well, that's also happens at a SOAR. I know, at least in the IBM SOAR, we do a right click and go to Carbon Black and isolate the whole endpoint if we want to, right from the SIM.
My point is the SIM couldn't do that. That is not a SIM function, but I may be confused.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. We may have to define the term SIM, because the SIM that I know of, we do it, and the SIM that I know in the industries, they do it as well.
Yeah, let me float a thought on that one.
Yeah.
The way I've
Yeah.
seen this is that we've got an evolutionary process going on. SIMs came up before SOARs, but
Yeah.
at the point that SOARs began to start, the need became obvious. People said, "Okay, well, I'll take my SIM and I'll add a couple extra features because somebody needs it." And
Right.
so you don't have these clean divisions, and I don't think we should expect them to come from the industry that way either.
Fair point. It's also going to be true on endpoints and XDR and NDR. Yep. Fair point. So we may, and your point, we may have to be more functional on the diagrams, and maybe put a big block that says SIM, and then part of it's a log manager consolidator, part of it is an analytic platform, yada yada. Part of it's an asset management system.
I think to expand on that just a little bit more, and Stephen brings up a good point.
Yep.
by drawing arrows into and out of one of a sim or a SOAR, you're I don't know if you're limiting it necessarily, but it does imply that there's some functionality that those things provide and some sort of implementation. And if sims and SOARs are going to be like a moving target, I mean, I guess in one way it's like, okay, this is an affordance for other people that are making these systems. Like, oh, I see, this is what's available that could go into my sim SOAR thing that I'm building. Or it could be also looked at that like, well, it says sim here, but our thing doesn't take those inputs, so it's not for us. I doubt the second case, but it is an interesting challenge to think about. It's like, well, the arrows going in, the arrows going out. Well, the arrows going in certainly from an OCA point of view are interesting because that's what source material can I use. Arrows going out imply that box has some functionality that a vendor may or may not have, in which case they'll be like, well, irrelevant. So I'm not quite sure how to deal with it other than maybe just simplify, perhaps, just in some cases, maybe it's just the SOC analyst, right? Whatever tools they have, it's just whatever information goes to the SOC analyst, perhaps.
Guy over here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Just a thought to try.
And I think that's going to be true for a lot of discussions, guys. That's it. I've been looking at XDR a lot lately, right? And that's all, melding a bunch of things together that can do more than endpoints. Network endpoints now are in there, right? So,
right. But in the end, I think, yeah, in the end, it's just really these systems are basically to help people, right? It's the person. There's a person behind the scenes, that's cares about, or is tasked with securing and visibility and so forth.
Exactly. And again, back to your point, Mitch, and then that's the point of we had 3 diagrams, one for the SOC analyst, one for the threat, so we can get more into the detail of the use case. And that's where we've been working on the threat one next, but this was the sim one, as you can see, because of the fact that the focuses are different, and the data is different based on which one we feed in.
So maybe since the diagram is mostly about sim, don't include the SOAR in this one?
Well, the sim talks to the SOAR.
Yeah, so what? I mean, the SOC analyst is the person, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
You can
we'll
ignore
get all
that
3
comment.
diagrams together, and then we'll figure out what we need to do with them. But I did like the persona that I wanted to be thorough when I looked at each of these boxes. If I put myself as the person inside of it, what am I talking to? What's feeding me? What do I reaching out for? That was the point of these diagrams. And then we'll do the same here and the same here. So those 3. Okay. And then you're right. We can back up and say maybe there's a macro level that's a little bit better to look at, right? Because I hear you. Okay. So, all right. So, the good topic. Thanks for the discussion on topic 1. Topic 2, we'll skip because it's not here. We'll go to topic 3 because I see Forrest has come in. Hello, Forrest.
Good afternoon.
Hey, you and Mark are here. And so what I wanted to talk about was we kicked it off in an email the other day, was the discussion on the Ontology group and, some thoughts on how we can kind of get that started. Because I think, to me in OCA, that's kind of the central, the data model and the Ontology, which I guess are 2 different things because I'm getting educated by Forrest, are really important and fundamental to how we're going to make progress here. And those are the things that we haven't really even started on yet. So I'm getting anxious. And I think with what we just saw in the outline in that use case, we've got a good layout of what we're looking to do in terms of defining interactions between different systems and start laying out, what is common and how do we communicate. And so I kind of want to talk, maybe Mark, as far as you can help us with this with Mark, how do we get that going with some ideas on how to get it started? And a second conversation, which I was talking to David about when we started is, my comment again about, thinking about OpenC2 and how that aligns with the Ontology work we're planning to do. And so I can make sure those all kind of fit together. So that's the topic I'll introduce. Forrest, would you like to kick it off?
I guess so. Could you do me a favor, Russ, and and put that graphic, that picture that was up there just a second ago that you just got rid of? Can you just go ahead and put that on there? I think that's going to be useful for us.
Yes, I will certainly.
Dog. My dog is begging for attention. Hey, dog.
Oh, I know. second.
Especially, they know when I'm on the phone that they can get whatever they want
This is
to
smart.
get me to.
Yeah, dogs are definitely smart.
They become.
I think it's this one.
So we got 6 of us on the call here. We got Adam. We got Mark. Where's Mark?
Mark's on.
More than 6. I don't know.
Mark's there.
Yeah, I know we have many more than 6. Oh, Steven's here. Hey, everybody.
Got a bunch of fun
Gang's all
folks
there.
Yeah. Gang
Okay.
Let me find. Hold on.
So, as we were talking about emails, if you weren't privy to the emails back and forth between Mark and Russ and Jason and I, how do we start carving up this elephant? Yeah, or actually, you know, the one that you had with the whole architecture up there a second ago.
Yeah, hold on. I think I got the wrong thing up on my
The very
screen.
last one.
Yep, gotcha. Sorry. Sharing the wrong one. Hold on. Share. I want the Google one. Share content. I hate having all these screens. This one. That one, right? This one?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine right here. Okay. So as an example, this is a story that we've depicted. And we've depicted it in such a manner that the humans amongst us, and I'm pretty sure that's everyone on this call, I don't think there's any bots on the call right now, can see this, and in their mental world, they can understand it to a sufficiently common degree. However, if I were to take this SVG file and give it to a computer, the computer might understand some of it, but it will not be able to understand it to the same level that we can commonly understand. So one thing that an ontology can do for us, it can create us that formal representation in machine readable format from which we can create this story. So what I'm thinking is that may be, you know, back to the how do we start carving the elephant up? That might just be a way for us to get started. If we say, okay, let's tackle this right here, and this right here is simple as it might be for us to comprehend. It's sorry, my dog is literally having a battle with himself. Dude, I can't get that out of the room. Go. He likes to fight himself. Go, get out of the room. Thank you. Close the door. Okay. So what we can do is we can take this as kind of a starting point to depict in ontological template format, and then share that with people, and then we could actually put. So for example, behind this, so again, this is kind of blending 2 different things. You know, again, it's how we conflate stuff. This is blending a general representation of malware detection with a use case of, is that Bob up top? So Bob is actually experiencing, and so an instance of malware detection in the real world. Okay, so we could actually use this to go to instance level data, and we could put this in a tool, and we could actually do some queries, we could actually do some reasoning across it. So that's something that we could do. So what I'm thinking is maybe that's where we start, and we just literally carve out time and we just jump into it. And then what that might do is might give us an idea, Mark, and right now this is brainstorming session right now, folks. That might give us an idea. Once we do that little drill, it might give us appreciation for how complex it is, how vast our challenges ahead of us, and all that type of thing, so we can actually kind of start developing a more structured way ahead to tackle what we would consider. And it also will help us figure out what's going to be in the bucket and out of the bucket as far as from an OCA perspective. I would contend that we probably, you know, it's an iterative fashion too. We would start with something fairly simple, fairly, you know, not too complex as the OCA ontology, and then we would build from there. And then we would also leverage, as I've talked about before, we will leverage terms and concepts that maybe exist in other ontologies, and we would just say this characterization of putting these terms and stuff together is the OCA recommended view of the cybersecurity domain. And so the difference there is the terms and definitions in the ontology may not exist in OCA curated ontology that we would have to be, but it would be something, and that would also show that we're also leveraging and partnering with other initiatives, and it would keep us from having to fight with somebody else about who's actually in charge of what. I'm not sure if that made a whole lot of sense to people, but let me just throw that out there and ask questions and comments and other ideas.
I think, to me, that makes total sense. Maybe you said another way, the way that I kind of comprehended that would be that I think we should define the upfront design rules of this open heterogeneous distributed system, that is a cybersecurity architecture for any given enterprise or wherever. And then the ontology comes from there. But the ontology has to support, facilitating that distributed system and according to those rules.
Right, and so there's kind of two different ways we can go about it. There's another graphic, I think, somewhere, which is the general. It is a more general representation, right? And this is a use case representation, and I'm assuming it's in the deck someplace. But so the difference between going down the two different routes is if we did this. So this here, in ontological terms, combines T-box and A-box, or your general concept of the model with specific instances of it having been employed. So this would, no kidding, on March 5th, 19 whatever, or 2021, this person, Bob, sat at his computer and then this happened. That would be like a specific real world instance of the ontology in action. And so we could go to just a general level, which is, I think, in a different description about in general, stuff goes from here and go over to here, and then this communicates with that and pulls information from that and then interprets it like this. But if we were to say, and for example, here's how it's actually, these processes and stuff flow on with a specific use case, then it helps people kind of click, oh, that's a difference between a class term and an instance and a data that you would, because there'd be no data associated with the general model. This would have real world data with it. Bob would be sitting at a computer. The computer has a MAC address. It has an IP address. So we would have to fill all that stuff out to be able to make this real world.
Right.
And then you could see how you could actually start doing some queries and stuff across it using the concepts that are available to you in the ontology. Does that, so we might not, looking at it from a horizontal and vertical perspective, we would horizontally, include all of the major components. Let me see if I can blow this up here because I have a hard time seeing.
Oh, here.
Is there a zoom?
Yeah, so I think horizontally, it's all the major components, but it's time bound, right? Essentially,
right.
And then
and so,
vertically, it's
that help?
Different kind of swim lanes of the different systems and personas.
Well, and when I say vertically is like down to the instance, real world data instance level of a specific malware detection event. So so we might not have all of, well, I mean, I guess, so in this case, Russ, is all of the arrows and relationships and stuff that show up on the slide are also are repeats from the general architecture depiction, right? So you didn't leave any of it out when you created this, yeah. So you just we would do all of the horizontal architecture we developed, and then we would get to, and what we would find is, by going through that process, we would find there's actually more details that we probably left out on this use case right here. And when I say left out, it's that we've jumped over. We've made logical jumps in our craniums that a computer might not be able to do, and we'd be able to identify some of those.
Yep. And some, by the way, good point. Some are brought out in the written part of the use case. where humans are doing something, and I didn't represent that here, so you're absolutely right. And so remember, don't forget, we do have the write-up of the specific use case that we should embellish as we go.
Yeah, we would use that. So we'd use the write-up, so that would bound us for starting the project.
Because there is some of that.
So what we would do is we'd map a lot of this stuff out. We would see, so you've already done a lot of the work mapping, so we kind of map this out logically here. We would see what else might be missing in that write-up that we'd need to apply. And then we would start applying the ontological rigor to, what is so how would I define a malware protection scanner in my taxonomy? How do I define a SOC SIEM? Okay, what is this specific relationship? When I say I have this blue arrow that goes from here to here, what exactly does that do? And then what is also participating? Those type of things. And we would go through the drill. And that would take us a while. The good thing is every time you do it, you get to reuse the hard lessons that you've learned previously if you do it right. And so it gets quicker and quicker each iteration. But that's the approach we could take. So I think at this point, even though I don't have a lot of time next week, I will probably have more time available in July in general. And since I think SCIC is probably going to reuse a lot of this work for some of our offerings, because we basically do as a company, we do, we would get all the vendors on the phone here together, and we would take your products and we would do everything on this. We do all of this.
We do all this, yeah.
As a systems integrator. So I would just tell SCIC, hey, this work I'm doing for these guys, if it's good enough for OCA, it should be good enough for us. And so we would use it for some of our projects that we're trying to do to do this, to get the machines more involved in all these arrows.
That'd be nice. Like that. I like that.
Yeah. So I think I can justify the time spent fairly easily from that perspective.
Super. So yeah, if you can give us the jump start, I think you have a good idea of how to lay it out and get us initialized. If you could do that for us, and we'll follow up, not the next meeting, but the meeting after, because we're every 2 weeks, so the next meeting's still in June, so the one after that. Would that be okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be okay. I'll start. I will set a time, and I know a lot of people on this call want to be involved, so I'm thinking the week of 28th June, I'll have, let me ask right, okay, so during that week, as we would have our first working group, so obviously we wouldn't have a whole lot to tell you in this, bring back to the architecture working group, but let me ask people if maybe Monday, the afternoon of Monday the 28th for 2 hours from 3 to 5, does that work for Eastern time, 1500 to 1700? The 28th, how does that work for Mark and Adam and anybody else who wants to?
This is Russ. It works for me. I'm fine with that time.
Okay.
Yeah,
Adam,
go for it.
Adam, Bill. Yeah.
I think it works for me. I'm looking now.
Can you make it, Mark?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
What was the date? Sorry, what was the date again?
6:28 in the afternoon. Yeah.
Yep. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm good.
For sure.
Okay, I'll go ahead and block it.
Yeah, go ahead and send out a calendar invite. Great. Thanks, fellas.
And what would be helpful, folks, is if you have like an iPad where you can do squiggles on it. That helps us with kind of the fact, get over the fact that we're not in a room where we can also a whiteboard. Whiteboards are usually very helpful for this. So if you can also plug in like an iPad or something where you can draw on, that might be something to.
There you go. Hey, this WebEx, the WebEx lets you draw. See.
Yeah, and so the WebEx will let you draw, but it's just kind of hard to do it with your mouse. If you have a tablet that has like a pen, like an Apple Pen type of thing.
I gotcha.
Then you can draw more precisely.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're right. It's like me trying to sign.
All right. Well, so I'll send the invite out. I'll send the invite out to the architecture working group, and then if anybody wants to forward it to anybody you want.
Perfect. That works. All right. All right. Now I got to figure out how to stop annotating. Oh, there we go. There it goes. Cool. Okay. So another topic I wanted to chat real quick about is Mark, you're still on, right? And David, you're still there. Is the discussion with OpenC2 and how that fits in here? I just had some thoughts about that I wanted to talk about. Let's see. Let me find my right chair again. It's this.
Well, before you leave this,
Okay, go ahead. Shoot.
the way we're looking at the ontology is, you've got two examples here, quarantine device and block file. And so those are actions.
Yep.
And so we would, whatever the ontology comes up with as actions, then those are the things that OpenC2 would implement as data structures.
And these two, just so you know, these two are actually in the OCA Ontology. If you go out to the GitHub, I grabbed these from that. All right. So I want to meld them. I agree with you. Yeah. I want to meld them into what the OpenC2 is, because the verbiage isn't quite the same. They don't align. There's a bunch of things that aren't quite aligned. But these came right out of the OCA Ontology GitHub.
Yeah, and so what we'll do is we will so that step we take when we once we figure out, okay, there's this act called, or an action called quarantine device,
right? And
we would say the SOC participates in that act, and so we actually create it, and I'll go into stuff more details. And then what we do is, okay, this is what we all understand is what this term means. And then we would go, first thing to do is go reuse. Okay, where is the term? Is there a term in an ontology where that's already been identified? Is there a term in our language that we would do a same as type of thing? So then we would show the integration between different protocols, so you could interpret between the ontology and any type of language, that implementation language like OpenC2 or something. So, and then people can help me understand, and then there's probably people much smarter than me on this topic of like how you could translate from that RDF or OWL statement into a command in OpenC2 and go from there.
Right.
Good. That sounds good. I put up this picture, David. I think you may have drawn this thing.
It was actually drawn automatically, from the.
Oh, I love automation. That's awesome. Okay,
good.
Yeah.
But if you look down in the left side toward the bottom, OpenC2 command has 4 fields in it. One of it is the action it's an attribute. It's not a separate structure, so it's not shown on the diagram. But you've got the action, the target, the arguments, and the actuator function. So this is where that mapping would happen. If OpenC2 has a list of commands and I'm sorry, a list of verbs, actions, and I'm trying to remember now. I ought to have that memorized on the top of my list, what the equivalent of quarantine is. But we have allow and deny, and so block would be the equivalent of deny.
Okay.
So
I was looking through this. Oh, there it is. It's deny. Yeah.
So there's
quarantine might be contain.
Contain,
That's right. Yeah, that sounds right.
That's what you get when you turn 66.
So, given that, Mark, I think what we all intend to do is align the ontology with the OpenC2. Is there a way we can do that alignment exercise? Because right now we have our own separate quote unquote actions sitting in the ontology.
Right. Yeah. So I've asked a developer internally on my side to do that. It seems to me that it's just documentation work that needs to be done in the appropriate formats and things. So it all works on Git, but I'll keep pushing on that. Without extending it though, it feels a little bit to me like we're just, I don't know, like we're not really doing anything new.
No, at this point we're just aligning. I just want to make it real clear, right? Because that picture we were showing, would line up better. This picture, right, would line up better when we're using the command structures that already exist in OpenC2, not have new ones down here.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point about the new work, though. So the list of actions is built into the language spec, so that's semi-static. But that if we come up with new actions that don't map cleanly to any of the existing words in there, the verbs, we can rev the spec to add those. The other three are intended to be for new functionality. So you, the thing that's called an actuator profile can define whatever targets it wants and whatever responses you get. There aren't very many. There isn't very much in the way of response defined in the base OpenC2.
Right. Right.
Profiles are what actually do that. So if you want an SBOM coming back from your endpoint, then defining what an SBOM looks like is the purview of the SBOM profile.
Okay, but I would guess that one scenario I'm thinking of, David, is we add in the SCAP stuff, the orchestrate posture assessment kind of stuff. I would imagine we'd have to add that to your spec in order to align, wouldn't we? We don't have one of those now, do you?
That's correct. So yeah, the target, the assess command would, all the parameters to that command would go into the target. And it would probably be, query for assessment. We've got a query verb that we define what an assessment is by writing a profile.
Yeah. Okay.
So the dozen attributes that go into that query command, that's what you're defining when you're writing a profile.
And Bill and Adam, have you ever done a prototype of running SACM over using OpenC2? I know we talked about it, but have you ever done it before?
I have not.
Okay, fair enough. So it looks like this is the kind of alignment we would do, right? Is add those actions into this OpenC2 and align it so that the information that you're collecting through your current architecture can be driven through the OpenC2 structure.
Or at least part of it, I think, right?
Yeah, that's right. Fair.
Yeah.
Yep.
For a given subsystem, like posture assessment system, the things that system can do should be defined such that they're represented in, the command and control part of the ontology, but not necessarily, I don't think it comprehends events. It doesn't comprehend state.
Okay. And Adam, would we align it with the IETF document you pointed me at? Is that the kind of the spec we would be looking at to lay out how we want to define things?
I think probably. I mean, the core of what we want to do could be included in that.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Draft, and then we can point to OpenC2 and use it within that draft too. I mean, I'd like to implement some things and see how it all works out. Right. And like I mentioned, then once we expand essentially the ontology of actions and all that kind of stuff, we can maintain that outside and just point to wherever that's going to be maintained from the draft itself. Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that line was okay with you, and the IETF document looked like a good place to start with, not only aligning that. I mean, the other thing that I had in my mind, and this is a group question, is you defined a set. We're going to have to define a set of quote unquote topics that we're subscribing to or publishing to. I don't really have that in any documents. Is there any comments on how we want to define those things?
Personally, I don't. I think that's, we could easily come up with examples and define some.
Okay.
But I don't think we'll ever define all of them. And I think that it's most important to define that, this is not comprehensive. It has to be extensible. Things like that.
Oh, it certainly does. I just think you need a kind of starting framework, if you will, of how you're going to set up your queues and how we publish them, so that, you know, this diagram that we're looking at, we understand what we're listening for, where. I've usually sent some kind of directory of all the different queues and what you're using them for.
Right.
Yeah, I think the ontology will break that down.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the only thing I noticed, like from the current, OCA ontology, was the delineation between what's a kind of a directed message, and that topic name starts with the word action, and a publish subscribe, which starts with the word notification. It was as close to a definitive naming convention as I saw from there for topic names.
Yeah, and I think when Chris Smith, one of McAfee's principal engineers, wrote that, it is very much just a template of formatting, and we can completely blow that thing away and replace it, as far as I'm concerned. If anybody has opinions or whatever we should do there. I mean, there's not enough there to get hung up on what is there.
No, I just think it's a good time to let's start aligning it now with what we just talked about, so we can go ahead and start using it to pull this stuff together. All right, that's great. All right, thanks. Good discussion. Okay, I'm at the end of topics. Any other topics people want to bring up, or you want to put in my mind for our next call? Otherwise, I'm getting really good at these meetings because we're 5 of, so that's right on time.
Nothing for me. Thanks, Russ.
Okay, thanks, guys. Thanks again for the great attendance and discussion. I do appreciate it.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Yep, thanks. Have a good night.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.